Hello, my lovely Natsukis. It's your bestie Summer, and I know, I totally did this intro, and didn't record it because my mic was off. So the beginning of my last video was literally just 2 minutes of silence. So we're gonna do it right this time. I triple checked that the mic was on before I started recording. And yay, new video. We love. I know, it's amazing. It's wonderful. Not video. New fic. I know. It's amazing. We love. Amazing, wonderful. This is most likely, these chapters are gonna be done in 2 parts. So it's either gonna be 11 parts or 22. Or somewhere in between that. So that's what we're looking forward to. There are 71,000 words in this fic, so it's gonna be a long one. We're gonna have it for a while. We're gonna have it for a little while. It's wonderful. It's amazing. We love. This was actually done by the same creator that did Danny Wait Who's Danny. So it's gonna be a good one, you guys. You know it's gonna be a good one. So, anyways, I've been yapping about how good it is. Also, fun fact, I'm at a sleepover. Woo! We love. I know, it's wonderful. My friend is currently in the shower washing out hair dye. So, I'm here in the room alone with a doggo. A doggo who is honestly so fucking clingy. I fucking can't. She's so goddamn clingy. I love her, but she's clingy. But anyways, with that all out of the way, I have yapped enough. It is time. So, without further ado, let's get into Married to Winter written by Corkinavoid and read by Summer Audio. Sorry for stumbling. Summary. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, lived a beautiful, smart, and loyal prince. And yet, not his looks, not his wit, and not his people could have saved him when winter came to claim him. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, lived a handsome, kind, and strong prince. And yet not his face, not his heart, not his soul could have saved him from his own promise. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, time itself decided they belonged together. Quite literally. A fic where Prince Tim and Faye Danny were kind of stupid when they were kids, so now they are engaged in a fantasy fae sword and magic AU, now complete. Beginning notes. This is partially inspired by the anime Mahutsukai no Yome, a bunch of fae lore and fairies, and the general essence of the arranged marriage genre manhwas. Also, this post, link, it also has a very similar vibe to my other work, Fiancé to a Star, because you know how sometimes you read a story / listen to a song and feel like you want another one just like it, but not exactly like it. Yeah, well, I had the same idea, but about writing. They have different plot, though, so I hope you won't be bored by my another attempt at Fantasy Fae Danny story. Also, this one will be updated weekly, since I'm not translating, but writing from scratch this time. I hope you enjoy. P.S. Dan Dick is going to be happening closer to the end, and by the way, thank you, Sendril, for introducing me to their ship. I love them dearly now. Table of content, kinda. Chapter 1, Tim Danny. Chapter 2, Tim Danny plus Danny plus Valerie. Chapter 3, Jason plus Tim/Danny plus Frostbite. Chapter 4, Tim/Danny plus Jazz/Jason. Chapter 5, Damien and Danny plus Tim plus John. Chapter 6, Tim/Danny FIN plus Dick plus Barbara. Chapter 7, Danny and Bruce plus Noctur. Chapter 8, Dick/Dan plus Jazz/Jason. Chapter 9, Dick/Dan plus Sam plus Dora. Chapter 10, Sam plus Duke and Sam and Duke, not plus, plus John plus Steph plus Wolf. Chapter 11, Dick/Dan plus Batfam plus Superfam. Chapter 1, We Meet Again. It's been so long, I don't remember you anymore. Child of the Winged. Tim feels his heart skip a beat. He is not familiar with the title, but the woman, the man, the person, is looking him straight in the eyes, so there is no mistaking for who they are referring to. In fact, everyone in the ballroom is now looking at him. He's not exactly new to being the center of attention. A title of prince generally means people can and will stare at you everywhere you go. But this kind of attention and this whole situation is rather unexpected. Let's step back. Just a little. A few minutes back. He, along with his whole family, even Jason was here for once, was at the Yule Ball, a majestic annual evening, a celebration of the winter, the royal ball that everyone is so excited for every year. The decorations were chosen months before. The guest list has been carefully revised by at least 5 different councils. The menu took literal weeks to arrange and make all the food and drinks color-coded. The musicians were invited in advance from all around Gotham, and it was going great. Tim was so proud. It was the first time he was the only one mainly in charge of the preparations, and everything was absolutely perfect. Well, of course it was. Contrary to most of his other siblings, he was actually born and raised in a noble family. He knew very well how to arrange an event like this, albeit he's never done it on such a large scale. He used to be in charge of family gatherings in Drake Earldom, but continuing the fact his family's guest list was quite large, they were still no small gatherings. So organizing a Yule Ball was pretty much the same thing, only instead of earldom, he had to take care of a whole kingdom. And anyway, he had help with it. Dick liked throwing parties and particularly enjoyed choosing the decor for the venues, and Bruce had a partially unlimited budget. Being a king has its own benefits, and he had advisors and councils and... okay, not the point. The key word is it was going great. And then, right in the middle of it, a fae appeared, out of thin air, in front of Tim. At least they're going along with the theme, a little inner voice unhelpfully supplied, which was true, actually. The Yule Ball is traditionally set in white and silver and blue colors, so the ballroom looked like a fairy tale frozen forest right now. It had a dress code, too, so the guests were wearing all kinds of winter-themed gowns and accessories. Tim, not being an exception, in his snow-white suit with silver accents and a light blue cape that matched the color of his eyes. The fae, though, he's still not sure what gender they were. He, if they even had one, was all but putting them humans to shame. They were the embodiment of winter itself, their long hair white and sparkling like snow under the sun, their clothes pristine, alabaster, even though they looked like a very fancy take on messenger uniforms. They looked almost human despite their skin lacking any kind of color. Almost, because they had long, pointy ears sticking out of their hair, and also because the unblinking eyes that stared right into Tim's soul, as it seemed, were also white, no irises, no pupil, just white. And they were waiting. Tim belatedly realized how quiet everything was. No more music flowing through the ballroom, no lively chatter of their guests, not even the sound of clothes ruffling. He risked a glance around the room just to make sure the guests have not been frozen in their places by some kind of fey magic, but no, they were still very much alive and breathing, only too scared to move. Tim understood them rather well, but at the same time, he was kind of jealous. At least they didn't have the Fae's eyes right on them, but Tim did, and he did not like it. Alright, they won't go anywhere if he just kept silent and stared at the Fae. So what were the general rules when talking to Fae folk? It's not like it was mentioned in his lessons on diplomatic exchanges, but Tim read and heard enough stories. Don't tell them your name, don't apologize, don't express gratitude, be very careful on what you're saying and how you're saying it. Alright, he can do this. Probably. Maybe. He really hopes so. How may I refer to you? He finally speaks. His lips feel slightly numb, like he's been standing in the cold for too long. The Fae blinks, for the first time since they appeared, and inclines their head just slightly. I am Winter, carrier of frost patterns, and you may call me Wind. Their voice does, indeed, remind Tim of the howling of the wind in a blizzard. They fall silent again, unmoving in their place and patient. Come to think of it, Tim is not sure they are even breathing. Alright, focus. Carrier of frost patterns. That must be a title of some sort. That, added to the fact that their clothes look like messengers' clothes, cues him into guessing why the Fae is here. Not the actual reason, because he has no idea what kind of message they supposedly brought. But at least it's not a fight or some kind of twisted Fae game. Back to the talk. Tim had never felt so agonizingly nervous while speaking to someone, and he argued with the king of Gotham numerous times even before he became a prince himself. It is a pleasure to have you at the Yule Ball. Start with niceties, that's always a good thing to do. If I may ask, what brings you here? And straight to important questions we go. He's doing alright, or well, he thinks he is. At least the Fae does not look offended, so he is probably safe for now. Wind slowly, gracefully holds his hand out as if to offer something to Tim. There is nothing in it, but before he can even try to guess what this is supposed to mean, it's not an invitation to dance, is it now? There are frost patterns appearing in the air, a few inches over their hand. It looks beautiful and very fitting to their whole winter theme. But what catches Tim's attention is that the patterns form lines. Sentences. That is a letter? Oh, carrier of frost patterns. That makes sense now. Thankfully, it's written in a language he can read. Otherwise, Tim would have had a few very embarrassing moments trying to ask the Fae for translation. Although after reading even the first line, he feels like he would have preferred the embarrassment. Or not reading this at all. Or maybe fainting right now and right here, just like those maidens who make falling into the hands of their partners an artistic performance. Anything over this is... Tim stops himself before the rest of the sentence can escape his mouth. No matter his emotional state, he has no right to mess this up. This is still very much a Fae in front of him. He cannot, for the love of him, succumb to the panic and make some kind of stupid mistake. He is Timothy Drake Wayne, 3rd Prince of Gotham Kingdom, and Tim is really glad Bruce hadn't tried to interfere in his verbal acrobatics with the Fae, despite that he could just come up to them. Not that he wouldn't have done that, even if he had to stay on his throne. This is definitely an emergency type of situation. But still, in any other time and place, Tim wouldn't have even felt flattered by this display of trust in a special Bruce Wayne kind of way. But right now, he has more pressing matters. Namely, the fucking stealing the bride thing that is going on. Upon approaching a clearly worried, at least it's clear for Tim, for everybody else he probably looks just as unbothered and stoic as always, Bruce, Tim gestures for him to bend down. It is way too quiet in here, so he doesn't care for how stupid and unroyal it can look. He doesn't want anyone to overhear. Damn the acoustics in the ballroom. Good for music, yes, but very bad for having to explain an unexpected engagement. Bruce doesn't hesitate even for a second, obediently leaning down for Tim to whisper in his ear. It's an arranged marriage contract, Tim tells him as quiet as he can, shielding his mouth with both of his hands so no one can even read his lips, at least they try to. It may look childish, but again, does he care at this point? Absolutely not. Bruce's shoulders tense up. Tim sees him glancing back at the Fae, who is still standing in their place, unmoving, and then somewhere to the side, probably to one of his other children. Thank God Damien is not here at the moment. At least Tim thinks he's not. If he was, he would have already tried to either confront the Fae or interrupt the ball, or at least listen in on their conversations. It's phrased more like a prophecy and pretty much says I'm promised to marry the Prince of Winter Court and seems like the time has come to fulfill the promise. Tim explains, it will come a time for a child of the winged, which I assume is me since they refer to me as such, to be led to eternal frozen, for he is the promised soul and heart of wayward star, Prince of Winter, who kneeled and had his hand in marriage on the night of old moon. Bruce raises an eyebrow, an unspoken "did you do that?" evident in his whole posture. Tim resists the urge to hit him. Sure, he is not the most mentally stable person in the family. None of them are, really. But even he is not crazy enough to consciously consent to marrying a Fae. I've never met a Fae in my life before this day, he answers nonetheless, and Bruce narrows his eyes. But before he can say anything, Dick appears to his side. The first heir to the throne of Gotham looks absolutely stunning in his formal wear, albeit a little too shiny. Are those actual jewels on his lapels? Okay, Tim wanted to know who designed his suit just to pay them to never do that again. This is direct offense on his eyes. So, the eldest prince inquires, leaning down to Tim before he can ask him to do so, and Tim switches to his ear, briefly telling him all the same thing he told Bruce. What? Tim feels the pressure of his anxiety slightly lessen. At least he has his family with him. He's not alone. If he can't figure it out by himself, then they can all find a way out together. They have done it numerous times. Yet, as soon as he thinks that, he feels a cold presence behind his left shoulder, and when he turns, he sees Wynne standing there. Jinxed it. How did they even appear here so fast? Tim hadn't heard any footsteps, and judging by the faces of Bruce and Dick, they also haven't seen the Fae coming. Enough time for your farewells has been given. The Fae speaks, their voice and face lacking any kind of emotion. Wait, farewells? Tim stuttered. No, he thought. The Fae was just a messenger, not the... What do you even call this? The bearer of will? The guard? Hold on now, you can't just take him, Dick argues, seemingly forgetting who he's speaking to and reaching to grab Tim's shoulder. Bruce mirrors his gesture. Perhaps we can discuss the matter somewhere private. My son did not... I am not here to discuss, Sword of Iron and Stone. I am here to take what was promised. Wind answers, and if Tim thought their voice reminded him of the howling blizzard before, then it sounded very much like a winter storm now. The Fae looks Bruce in the eyes, staring him down despite being technically shorter. Everlasting Wen was kind enough to allow you a written letter and time for your goodbyes, and it would do you well to be grateful. Tim sees Jason and Cass making their way towards them through the crowd, both with their hands hidden, reaching for weapons, without a doubt. He has a nagging feeling they are not going to make it in time, even if they run, which is good, actually. He doesn't want the whole royal family to attack a Fae ambassador. That could end up in war or some kind of curse, and that's not going to make anything better. Besides, the Fae never lie about their promises and debts. That much Tim knows, so it must mean he actually did agree to give his hand to marriage to some winter prince, although he has no idea how and when. Maybe this is some kind of misunderstanding, or maybe they got the wrong person. It's a weak possibility, but not a non-existent one. Tim sees Bruce stubbornly narrow his eyes, certainly about to argue. He sees Dick's worried gaze searching his face. He sees Cass silently creeping up on the Fae despite her undoubtedly heavy dress suited for the princess she is. He sees Jason with murder in his eyes and what looks like a dagger in his hand. Tim is a smart person. Tim can see a few dozen ways this situation can turn sour in a blink of an eye, and so far, there is only one way it doesn't. So he turns to Wind and offers both his hands to them. He can find out what the deal is and how he got roped in from the other side by directly asking the Winter Prince. He doubts the messenger, or an ambassador, same difference at this moment, would be able to answer him anyway. I'm ready. He looks in the Fae's empty eyes with what he hopes is a calm determination. Wind blinks at him and smiles, their emotionless features morphing into a wicked grin full of sharp teeth, and takes his hand. Then we will be leaving now. Their voice is a gentle breeze, their hands cold as ice, their eyes suddenly a mirage of stars spilling from underneath their eyelids and around both of them, obscuring Tim's vision and making the ballroom of the castle fade away like a dream. The last thing Tim hears are the muffled screams of his siblings and Bruce's loud roar. Danny was in a good mood, which was a rare occurrence lately. Between the duties of Prince, his lessons with clockwork, and all the Yule preparation, he didn't really have enough time to just sit down and rest. But finally, everything was over and done with. The darkest night was going smoothly, without him needing to constantly watch over everyone and everything, and he could finally make time for himself. So he buried himself in a library with a new astronomy book he had found about a month ago, but didn't have time to read yet. Asked one of the maids to bring him something to drink, and was ready to spend the whole Yule night here, in the world of stars and celestial bodies. That was some really wishful thinking, it seems. A quiet sprite, Raindrop, if Danny remembers her name correctly, came not half an hour ago after he started reading, and informed him of a visitor in the main hall. A human, at that, and escorted by Wind. The good mood disappeared almost immediately. None of this was a good thing. An uninvited human in the infinite realms, particularly in the heart of Winter Court, eternal frozen, was just screaming trouble on its own, but combined with the fact that Wind was one of Clockwork's loyal subjects, well, this was not good news. So Danny rushed to the main hall, barely remembering to change his appearance enough to look less like a human boy and more like a Fae prince he is supposed to be. White hair instead of raven black, eyes of starry night instead of plain blue, the frost pattern of constellations on his pale cheeks, and white, formal winter robes instead of his usual comfy clothes. The only thing he liked about his formal wear was the one-shouldered cape. It was a gift from Frostbite, a cloak made out of the night skies and shimmering of ice and the moonlight, beautiful beyond anything he could have ever imagined. And the crown, of course. He was the prince. No one in Winter Court was higher than him, and to make that point clear, the crown of transparent, like glass ice, with the light of Aurora Borealis encased in it floated over his head, whether he liked it or not. Turning the last corner, Danny all but runs down the wide staircase of the main hall, his eyes on Wind and Wind only. "Carrier Frost Patterns," he greets him by title. They are not friends enough for Danny to call him by his chosen name, much less his actual name. "Young Prince of Winter." Wind inclines his head in greeting, but doesn't bow. Pesky bastard. Danny is his prince, albeit a young one. He is supposed to show respect, but he lets it slide as usual. Wind is older than him by at least 5 times, and he serves the previous prince, when Danny has yet to show how good of a prince he can be. "What brings you here? And with a guest, I see." Danny briefly glances to the human standing slightly by the Wind's side. A boy, looking no older than 18, wearing some really expensive suit. Must be a noble then, if not a royal. Danny appreciates the colors, though. It is very fitting for the eternal frozen, where everything is made of glaciers, snowfall, and faded winter skies. Actually, that reminds him. The boy must be really cold here. Not his problem, he tells himself. He's Wind's guest. "Everlasting Wen sent you his best regards and a present on the Seul." Wind's face shows no emotion, but Danny knows where to look. His pointy ears are raised up as if he was amused. Danny has a really bad feeling about this. He throws another quick glance at the human. This can't be what he thinks it is, can it? "Explain?" he asks, even if it sounds more like a cautious question than a direct order. Wind's ears twitch ever so slightly. Oh, so he is amused. Before he raises his hand and shows Danny the frosted letter. Despite being the winter spirit, Danny feels his blood run cold as he reads the icy lines. Written in sharp, clockwork's handwriting that looks mocking even in text. It's exactly what he thought it is. Oh, for everything holy and unholy. Danny waves his hand through the letter, making it turn to snow dust, and looks back to Wind. He kind of wants to punch the sylph in the face if he's being honest. Wind must have seen that particular desire either in his eyes or by the way his ears went down menacingly, because this time he actually bows, lowering his gaze. He doesn't apologize, of course. It's not him Danny is mad at, but the gesture conveys enough of, "I only did what I was asked to." Breathe in, breathe out. His Yule night is ruined, and he now has a fiancé out of all things. Great. Just perfect. Not to mention who his fiancé is, because there was only one person he kneeled and had his hand in marriage to. Breathe in, breathe out. Actually, no. To deads with it. Out. He orders Wind, his voice cold and unforgiving this time, like the core of Eternal Frozen itself. Sylph bows deeper as an expression of his farewells and vanishes from his sight. Danny closes his eyes and pinches the bridge of his nose, trying in vain to collect his thoughts. This is less than ideal, for sure. He doesn't understand the reason behind such a gift. He is only prince for the last 4 winters, including the current one, and by no means in a stable position. Marrying a human now would be an absolute disaster in the political scheme of things. The balance of seasons is already thrown off by the change of princes, and to do something like this so soon is going to lead to another conflict, not to mention the unavoidable conflict with Mortal Realm. Timothy is not an earl anymore, though even if he was, it would have still caused enough problems. But he is a prince. Prince of Winter? comes an unsure voice from in front of him, and Danny snaps his eyes open. Right, he can think about all of the implications later. Right now, he's got a freezing human in eternal frozen. That's an official title. You do not need to refer to me as such. As my fiancé, you may call me Wayward Star. Wait, no, that's too long for a name. Danny thinks for a moment before the book he's been reading just mere minutes ago comes to mind. Arcturus. You can call me Arcturus. That's similar enough to Wayward Star, isn't it? It should do for a name. Wait, he has to explain names now, otherwise Tim will be as confused as Danny was upon entering the Infinite Realms for the first time. Names hold power here, and to give someone your real name is to allow them to have full rights over you. He starts looking Tim in the eyes. So, do not, under any circumstances, tell anyone your name. Come up with something else and make it your chosen name. You can even have multiple ones and introduce yourself with a new name every time you meet someone. But be careful to remember who knows you by each one of them. There are also titles, and they can be official or personal. The official title refers to your position in court or elsewhere, and personal titles are given for your accomplishments. That would do for now. Sure, he could explain the details and the way all of the titles are formed, but that would take hours. And Tim is suppressing a shiver. Okay, they need to talk, but they need to do it in a different place. Somewhere his new fiancé won't freeze to death. Do I have to do it now? Tim cautiously asks, and Danny shakes his head. There's no rush. You can call yourself one of Winter for now. That's a title for anyone from the Winter Court. Or you can be Heart and Soul of Wayward Star. That would indicate you as my fiancé. It can even be Heart and Soul of Prince of Winter if you want to make an emphasis on your position. He offers multiple choices, and Tim looks rather uncomfortable about that. He starts, his teeth chattering, and Danny raises his hand, stopping him mid-sentence. First, let's go somewhere else. The main hall of Eternal Frozen is not exactly a comfortable place to hold important conversations. Besides, what kind of fiancé would it make me, freezing my promised one not 5 minutes after I met him? He attempts to joke, but it doesn't land. Tim's face looks just as cautious and distressed as before, at least to Danny. On the surface, the boy is holding himself rather well, appearing calm and collected. He imagines being taken to the Fey land with no prior warning would do that to a person. He waits for Tim to give him a curt nod before turning his head away. What was the name of that spirit who announced the arrival of Wind and Tim in Eternal Frozen? Raindrop, he calls without raising his voice, and a Fey the size of his palm appears in the air, looking at him expectantly. Danny quickly goes through the rooms of the palace in his mind, trying to remember the warmest one. Would you be so kind as to bring a cup of warm milk and a few furs to the silver parlor? Furs warm or furs pretty, Prince of Winter? The spirit inquires, with a playful smile, and Danny feels his ears go down in an embarrassed gesture. That was definitely a quip at how he kept rambling about names and stuff, despite knowing Tim was cold. White Fox, he clarifies, and gestures for Tim to follow him as he walks up the stairs. His fiancée falls in step right behind him. The long walk to the silver parlor doesn't take long, and it is noticeably warmer than the main hall or the hallways. The interior, or the room, is contrary to the name. Not silver, but old wood and cream, with soft and comfortable furniture. It wasn't used a lot, serving the sole purpose of a designated meeting room for when members of the Summer Court come to Eternal Frozen. which, counting the fact that summer and winter had little to no connection with each other, happened very rarely. The soft white furs are already put on one of the armchairs, and a steaming cup of milk sits right in front of the table. Tim takes that as an invitation, thankfully, and all but wraps himself in the warmth of the fur, breathing a soft, relieved sound. Danny sits on the opposite side of the table, on the couch, and smiles a little, careful not to show the teeth. "I take it you have questions?" He tilts his head, while Tim holds the cup of milk in his hands, evidently trying to warm his fingers. The boy nods slowly and straightens his back, out of habit most likely. Official talking, official posture. "You said I'm your fiancé?" He pauses, and Danny nods, confirming that piece of information. "Not to offend you, but are you sure? I assure you that I have never met you, or any other fae for that matter, in my life. I don't understand how I could be the one you, or the one Wind, was looking for." Danny blinks at him owlishly. Oh. Shit. First off, the prince seemed just as surprised about the engagement as he was. Tim took that as a good sign. Even if he was, by some way, the child of the Winged from the message Wind brought him, surely the prince wouldn't like a surprise marriage. So there was a good chance of him breaking the engagement and returning Tim back to Bristol. Secondly, the Prince Arcturus, as he introduced himself, was nice. Not in the sense of looking nice, even though he was indeed unearthly beautiful, but in a sense of being nice to Tim specifically. He explained the whole deal with names, and he advised him on not telling his name to anyone. Not that Tim was going to, but he appreciated the warning, and he seemed to understand Tim's discomfort, taking him to a much warmer room and asking for milk and furs to help warm him up. As far as Tim was concerned, that was not a very fae behavior. The fair folk typically didn't bother to care how humans felt around them. So, understandably, Tim had his hopes up. The prince didn't want to get married, if his reaction to Wind's letter was any indication. Tim himself didn't want to get married, not to mention that he can't even imagine living in a palace made fully out of ice. Humans are not capable of surviving in such a climate. Yet, he still started by asking the most important question. After all, there was still a chance they got the wrong person. Arcturus's reaction was... well... His whole face fell, his pointy ears dropped down, and for a solid second he froze in place. Tim was by no means an expert on the fae, but if that was a human, he would say the prince was stricken. And then his freckles started sparkling like snow under the sun. Tim wasn't sure what that is supposed to mean, and despite Arcturus being nice, he was still very much a fae prince, so he doesn't want to make any assumptions. So he keeps quiet, holding on to the warm cup of milk in his hand for dear life, and prays for the best. Arcturus drops his head down and rubs his face with both hands. Wow, he's articulate. The gremlin voice in his mind notes, and Tim can't help but think this is kind of adorable. He won't say that out loud, of course, but he is not afraid to admit that it in the safety of his mind. Okay. The prince seems to come back to his senses and looks Tim in the eyes again, his expression uncomfortable and almost apologetic. First off, yes, I am sure. Child of the Wing. It's not a title, but well, it's you and your last name? Dragon's Wings. Don't ask me who came up with the system of names and titles. I don't know. And if I did, I would have personally strangled them. Dragons? Tim frowns. His last name is... Oh, Drake. Right. That's also a word for dragon, which explains the winged. Dragons do have wings. Hold on a second. You know my name? Tim hears himself suddenly lose his voice, his whole body becoming numb. How? He's doomed. He is just doomed. That's it. Arcturus raises his hands in an attempt to placate him, probably, and he looks worried when he starts rapidly explaining. I know it, yes, but I don't have it. There's a difference, so your name is safe, don't worry. And besides, you also know mine. He makes a short, nervous chuckle and rubs the back of his neck. This gesture feels somehow familiar, but Tim can't put his fingers on why. Meanwhile, the Fey Prince keeps talking. I think you just forgot? Forgot meaning a Fey. I think that would be a pretty memorable occasion. Tim snaps back, too panicked to keep himself in check. To hell with it. This is just too much. I might have looked different that time, Prince sheepishly admits, not looking him in the eyes. And before I explain that, I need you to know I did not plan on making you keep the promise. I know you were a child, and, well, you didn't know what you're getting yourself into. But Everlasting Wen has his own plans, it seems. A child? What? Before he can even finish thinking that question, the appearance of Arcturus in front of him shifts. Starkingly, white hair turns to black, disheveled mess, and the white royal garments becomes plain linen tunic and dark brown breeches tucked in knee-high boots fit for a hunter, not a prince. His eyes also change. Instead of a night sky inside his eye sockets, Tim just sees normal, icy blue eyes. Oh, and he knows what the sparkling of red freckles meant. The boy's cheeks are red. It was, and it still is, a blush. But that's not important right now, because Tim, with a skip in his heartbeat, realizes he does actually know his name. It was years ago. He'd still been Timothy Drake, and not Timothy Drake Wayne at that time. He was, 7, 8 years old, and every summer, the Drake family spent in their country estate away from Bristol. The summer home was boring and empty, with nothing to do but sit in the library and read all day. Tim liked books, that was true, but he did not like reading that much. But there was something Bristol never had. Endless grounds around the estate. There was a lake and a forest, and Tim wanted nothing more than to explore it all, climb every tree, swim in the lake, and watch the birds and animals and fish. Fortunately, or maybe unfortunately when he thinks of it now, his parents never cared much for what he did in his free time. Sure, they've told him not to go in the forest, but they haven't actually enforced the rule. So Tim did what he wanted for the most part. And what he wanted was to go to the forest every day. That's where he met him. A boy from a village down the river flow. A hunter, older than him by a few years. He was friendly and nice, and he didn't ask Tim to go home. Instead, he showed him a fox hunting a hare, a cardinal sitting in its nest, and all the berries and fruits he could and could not eat in the forest. He even taught Tim a little about shooting a bow, and later it became the reason he took a liking to archery. They used to meet almost every day for the whole summer, and on the last day, just before the Drakes had to leave back for their house in Bristol, Tim had been so upset about not seeing his friend anymore that he almost cried. The hunter smiled at that, and then bent his knee and told him that they will meet again next summer, And yet, that was not enough for Tim. The boy was one of the very few people in his life who actually paid attention to him, and he wanted to keep him forever, like most kids do with their favorite toy or a book. So Tim asked the boy to marry him. Mom and Dad were always together, and they were married, so the same solution should work for Tim, right? The boy agreed with the same bright smile he always had, twined a ring out of a flower stem, and made a whole show of proposing to Tim. By the time he finished, Tim was laughing at his antics and readily put the flower ring on his finger. The next summer came, and Tim ran to the forest at the first chance he had, but the boy wasn't there. He wasn't there the next day, or the next day, or the day after that, and after a month of forest visits, Tim finally gave up. He buried himself under all the books from the library and spent his days indoors, reading everything he could find just to not think of the forest and the stupid promise. By the time the next summer came around, he all but forgot about it. And then his parents had their accident, and Bruce came into his life, and before Tim knew it, he had forgotten all about the forest full of wonders and the summer country estate at all. Yet there he is now, sitting right in front of that hunter, Danny, who had not aged in the slightest. Tim doesn't really know what to say. Or, no, he does. "Why didn't you come?" he asks, after a few minutes of an uncomfortable but complete and uninterrupted silence. Danny, who spent this whole time just staring down the floor, snaps his gaze at him. He looks serious and even a little nervous, his usual smile that Tim remembers vividly now absent. I am a changeling. I lived among humans in place of their child. A few months after you left, I have been, let's say, compromised. So I left the mortal realm." He paused and gives Tim a weak, apologetic smile. "For what it's worth, I am sorry." A fae apologized to him. No, it's actually worse. The Prince of Winter apologized to him. Can this day get any weirder? Somehow, Tim doesn't doubt that it can. He finishes his milk that has grown lukewarm by now, and sets the empty cup on the table, leaning back in his armchair and closing his eyes. He needs a minute. So the Prince of Winter is a village boy he's met when he was 7, and isn't that a bizarre statement to wrap his head around? At least now he knows for sure the Fae got the right person. Existential dread aside, what does that leave him with? He's still engaged. The problem has not been solved, but at least now he feels a little better about it. The wayward star he's supposed to be the heart and soul of is not just some random fae. It's someone he knows, and someone who's been his friend once. Tim has so many questions. Did you know what you were doing? What, were you serious? Why now? Why didn't you tell me? Who am I to you? Am I your friend? Do I even know you for who you are? But they can wait. They have more pressing matters at hand. When Tim opens his eyes again, Danny is still in his human appearance. Good, because that makes him easier for Tim to read. "Can you call off the engagement?" he asks, and he's almost proud of how calm and businesslike he sounds. Danny briefly winces, and his expression sours. "If I could, I would not be sitting here and explaining it all," he confirms Tim's suspicions and sighs, his shoulders slumping. "Believe it or not, I was not serious about the offer in the first place. At the time, I didn't even know I was a changeling and thought of myself as a human. Despite that, as I found out later, I have made the proposal by all the rules, including the courting. The only loophole was that you didn't know about it, and as long as one of the parties does not acknowledge the deal, it cannot be executed. My plan was to wait for you to die, as morbid as that sounds. Fae live much longer than humans, so as long as you did not become a fae or a god yourself, I would have been freed from the deal in 80 or so years. Gods are real. Nice to know. Tim shakes his head. What if I just go back and we never speak of this again? Not acknowledging the deal sounds like a good idea, by Tim's standards. No matter that he knows Danny, that doesn't mean he's going to jump into his arms and happily get married in the Fae world. He does not want to spend the rest of his, what Danny said, 80 years in a frozen castle. You know of it. That is acknowledging enough. The boy explains the mysterious ways of Fae thinking, and Tim doesn't even try to hide his irritation. Right. Should have expected that. You're saying there's no way out? He summarizes, looking Danny straight in the eyes. The Fae boy doesn't blink as he looks back. Not that I know of, he answers carefully. The library is at your service if you want to look for a way yourself, but knowing Everlasting One, there's probably no escape from it. Who is Everlasting One? This is not the first time he heard the title. My mentor of sorts. He was the Prince of Winter before me, but he left Winter Throne 14 seasons ago. That's almost 4 years, 3.5. Tim is grateful for the clarification, but he can count, thank you. Although something in this sentence bothers him. Throne? How come he was the prince and not king? Danny takes a deep breath and leans his back on the couch, lifting his feet off of the ground and sitting crisscross at the cushions. Tim debates it and for a moment and then does the same. His feet are cold. Alright, I'm going to do a short version of a hierarchy lesson here. If I try to explain everything, we're going to be sitting here until dawn and my tongue will dry out and fall off. He chuckles. We are the Winter Court. There are 3 more seasons and 3 more courts, respectively. Spring Court, Summer Court, and Autumn Court. There are also other, lesser courts, like the Night Court and the Day Court, or the Jewel Court. They all have different areas of expertise, but generally the courts of seasons are the largest and the most powerful ones. Yet, above all of us, there are the Queen and her King, the only ones of their titles. So, the highest ruler of a court, by tradition, bears the title of a prince. Hence, I am the Prince of Winter, and I am the one of the Winter Throne. How about Seelie and Unseelie courts? Tim can't help but ask. He may have heard something about the courts of seasons, but he sure never heard of Day, Night, and Jewel and whatnot. Danny makes a so-and-so gesture with his hands. They're not courts, really. That's a division by the origins. Humans came up with it. They named all the Fae they deemed malicious Unseelie, and the ones that were of help Seelie. And were they right? Tim is actually curious now. All the reading he did as a child ended up making him really hungry for knowledge. Danny smiles, and this time Tim sees his teeth. Sharp and definitely not human, just like the winds. It depends. Are changelings Seelie or Unseelie? Tim thinks about it. It sounds like a trick question, but he can't find a way for the children stealing Fae imposters to be Seelie. Unseelie? Right. Then how about Banshee? Oh, okay. This one is a trick question. Banshee are the ones who warn people of their death, or death of those they know by their loud noises. Is it a good thing? They are warning the living, but then isn't it easier to not know? Besides, no matter how hard you try saving everyone, people are still going to die if a banshee cries for their death. Unseelie? Tim says, unsure. Danny grins again. How about leprechauns? Tim huffs and rolls his eyes. The fae that guard pots of gold, but catching them is really hard. Yet they can be quite vengeful, and they are easily offended. I get it. There's no such thing as only good or only bad, he admits, and wraps himself tighter in the furs. He's already warmed enough, but this is really comforting. Danny hums. So the Seelie and unseelie courts are purely subjective. Do you have any other urgent questions or requests, or should I ask someone to prepare your quarters? You look like you could use some sleep. Sleep does actually sound nice. He was up all night yesterday running the last preparations for the Yule Ball, and now, after his initial rush of anxiety and agitation has gone down, he feels exhausted. Besides, it's not like Danny's gonna run away. This is his palace, after all. Tim rubs his eyes. Are my quarters gonna be as cold as the rest of Eternal Frozen? He should start using the proper names for it looks like he's gonna be staying here for a while. Danny laughs quietly and stands up from the couch, going around the table and offering Tim a hand to help him stand up. Not that Tim needs it, but it's a nice gesture. No, you will be using my sister's quarters for now, until I make you your own. She's human, so they're much warmer than the hallways, and they're fitted for humans to use. No weird fae showers. He snorts. Seems like that is some kind of an inside joke. Tim takes the offered hand and stands up, hesitating to take the soft and warm furs off. He knows they were brought specifically for him, but Danny seems to notice his doubts, because he smiles. Keep the furs. I'll make you a charm later, so you will not have to be touched by the cold, but that may take a few days. That is surprisingly considerate of him. Tim nods, unsure of how to express his gratitude without actually saying thank you. That reminds him. Does the library have any books on proper fae etiquette? He asks as they leave the silver parlor, and he can't help but shiver at the freezing temperatures of the hallway. Danny beside him also changes, his colors and clothes shifting again, back to the whole royal regalia look. And Tim once again can't help his curiosity. And what's with the different appearances? That's two related to each other questions. No, the library doesn't, since most of the fae naturally know how to speak with other fae. The appearances are different, for better showing who I am at the moment. In the silver parlor, I was a human, who was your friend once upon a time. Now I am Wayward Star, Prince of Winter, and your fiancé. Arcturus, explains, guiding him through the room and halls. Strangely enough, Tim only hears the echo of his own footsteps, and not Arcturus's. And not my friend anymore? He decides to ask, at least one of those questions that has been at the back of his mind ever since he made the connection between the Prince of Winter and Danny, the friendly hunter from the forest. The boy stops. The touch of cold fingers that are gently holding Tim's palm become a tight grip for just a second before Danny looks at him with a sad, yet maybe a little hopeful expression. I'm afraid I lost that title a little less than 10 years ago, he answers, and Tim can't really argue with that. Danny is not his friend. He was back in the sunlit forest of Drake Estate. Right now, he's just another stranger. Tim looks back in his eyes and smiles only slightly. It's not like you've lost it once and for all. Aren't the fae exceptionally talented when it comes to finding what they misplaced? Is that enough of an olive branch? If Tim has to survive in a completely new world that works by the rules he is not familiar with, He really needs allies. And who could be a better ally than the person who is now his fiancé and a Prince of Winter himself? Danny feels fuzzy on the inside. Fuzzy and warm. This is going a lot better than he anticipated. At least Tim doesn't hate him for his stupid mistake, and that's already much more than he could have asked for. Jazz's quarters are more or less a standard set of guest rooms you would find in a royal palace. A sitting room, a bedroom, and a bathing room to the side. They are warm and comfy. His sister had made all of the designs herself when she first moved to the Infinite Realms. She fully planned to live here, so she made sure her room would be a dream come true. Plush carpets and soft couches, a coffee table, and a few bookshelves, filled to the brim with her treasured collection of lost knowledge, and all the rooms have a beige and honey color theme. Overall, the quarters look like they came from a cottage somewhere in the countryside and not a winter palace. While Tim is looking around, Denny walks all the way to the opposite side of the sitting room and opens the curtains, revealing a tall, stained glass window with intricate flower patterns. He glides his hand over one of the glass flower vines until it reluctantly moves and forms a door handle under his fingers. The magic is going rusty. It's been a long time since Jazz visited him. He grabs the handle and opens the door to the balcony. "Wait!" Tim's worried voice comes from behind him, but he cuts himself short upon seeing what lies on the other side of the glass door. The balcony does not open into eternal frozen. Instead, there's a colorful summer countryside, an endless field of grass and blooming flowers. A butterfly flies up to Danny, and he gently waves his hand to scare it off. His skin is too cold for the insect to land on. "This is a little piece of summer," he explains, turning to Tim, who has shed his furs and joined him on the balcony. "My sister doesn't like the cold, so we trade a few favors for her room to have this view. But at least you'd be able to open any window in this room without a chance of freezing." "How does that even work?" Tim muttered under his breath, his eyes not leaving the grass field. Danny finds he likes the look of this childlike wonder on his fiancé's face. "Magic," he answers with a shrug. "You won't be able to go there from here. It's only a vision. If you jump from the balcony, you will end up in a snow forest that's outside the eternal frozen." Tim hums thoughtfully, his eyes not leaving the scenery. "The chosen names, do they have a theme? I've noticed everyone I've met so far has more or less nature thing going on with their names. Raindrop, wind, star." Denny doesn't understand the thought process. Tim's jumping through the topic seems not connected at all, even by Fae standards, but he answers nonetheless. At least he's not trying to choose his words so carefully anymore. "The names usually give you a glimpse of what the being associates themselves with. You don't have to choose it with a theme in your mind, but it would be appreciated if you were also to choose something akin to nature. By the way, don't shorten them. Star is a different name from Wayward Star. Like how Tony can be a different name from Anthony." He smiles, watching Tim look embarrassed for a moment. How do Fae apologize? I know there's a rule for not thanking the Fae and not saying sorry, but what do you say instead?" Danny bites his cheek from inside of his mouth to stop himself. Oh, his fiancée would fit wonderfully here. The unrelenting curiosity hidden in his words. To express apologies or gratitude is to acknowledge a debt. Saying sorry would mean that you have made a mistake and you are willing to pay for it. And saying thank you is to make known that you value what has been given to you to the point you want to do something in return. Humans tend to throw both of them around with no deep meanings, just a casual way to show you're listening. But think of it. Does your mistake really ask for an apology? I'm not mad at you for making it, and I'm not scorning you for it, only correcting it. So as long as you don't make it again, you can consider the matter resolved. Danny turns his head to also look over the greenery outside. The wind comes in waves, making the grass field ripple like waves on a still lake. Well, we are on that subject. Chosen names are not for you to use without permission. I told you you can refer to me by my chosen name, either of them, but don't call wind or raindrop by them. It would be stepping over the boundaries. He's the carrier of frost patterns to you and me both, and while raindrop is raindrop for me, for you she will be made of winter. It is not a personal title, but a title for all the Fae working in Eternal Frozen, though so you might not summon her specifically, if you call upon it. Tim nods slowly, and finally steps away from the balcony and back into the sitting room. Danny follows him, closing the door behind them, and the handle disappears, the stained glass vine resting back in its place. Polaris, then, Tim suddenly tells him, and it takes a few seconds for Danny to realize this is his name. A chosen name for a star, and similar enough to what Danny called himself. Sure, Tim knows almost nothing of name traditions, and Danny wanted him to choose something without any limits or rules. It's the least he could do for a human who was thrown into the infinite realms unwillingly. But this is a known, albeit cheesy, tradition for couples to choose their names in the same theme. Danny feels his cheeks heating up, despite being a winter spirit, and his ears raising up excitedly. I'm glad to know you by your name, Polaris, he answers stiffly and formally, not looking at Tim, and the boy stops in his tracks. Is it a bad name? Danny shakes his head. No, it's a good name, quite fitting, also. The North Star will always be a guide and help you find your way, he muses, walking towards the bedroom doors and throwing them wide open. This room is also made in a countryside cottage design, the sheets on the bed being handmade quilt. It's only then that Danny realizes he probably shouldn't be in his fiancée's bedroom, even if this is technically his sister's room. He got too distracted and lost in his thoughts. I should leave you to it. He turns to Tim, stepping away from the doors. He gestures to the bathroom doors, hidden inside the bedroom. You can use anything you find. My sister's not one to visit regularly, so she won't mind. If you need anything else, just call upon Maids of Winter. They will bring you all the things you require. Be polite to them. They are not servants here, but also members of Winter Court. And if you happen to have any troubles, call my name. I will come shortly. With these last instructions, Danny steps back to the doors, leading back to the hallway. He's also got things to do, namely, ask Clockwork what in the Seven Kingdoms is going on, and why did the old spirits decide to throw a fiancé at him on this nice Yule night. But just as he opens the door to leave, he hears Tim's voice again. I kept the flower. Danny turns back to face him, and the boy's cheeks look a little too pink. He does not look Danny in the eyes, and he's fidgeting with the hem on his sleeve. The one you made the ring from, he clarifies, when Danny doesn't answer. I dried it and kept it in a fairy tale book. Danny smiles and inclines his head in a short bow towards his promised one. Sleep well, Polaris. End notes. Original non-binary character go brrr. I love Wind. I love them so much. I just heart. And they will be back, but no sooner than chapter 6, I think. By the way, yes, Wind did give Tim permission to call them by their chosen name, but Danny doesn't know that. Also, Wind never gave him that permission, so he simply assumed. I cannot express through words how excited I am for writing this. And that was part 1, chapter 1 of Married to Winter, a DPXDC podfic written by Corkinavoid and read by Summer Audio. Guess what I got? I got this fic. I got this fic for you guys. I got this fic. No, but I was looking, you guys all enjoyed the Danny Wait Who's Danny Faye fic, so I figured, why don't I try and find another one? And so I scoured and I searched and I tried and I found it. And surprise, surprise, it's written by the same author. It's such a good fic. I loved reading it. I finished the entire thing, and now I want to read, the next one in the series, because the next one isn't Tim Danny, it's Dick Dan. So slay, we love, go off. But it was just, this is just such a cute little fic, such a cute little thing. I had a lot of fun reading it, and I'm gonna have so much fun recording it, and I hope you guys enjoy it, because you guys loved the other Faye one so much. So I figured, why not I find another one, huh? So yeah, there's a lot of sound in the background. Sorry about that. Also, sorry about the staticky noise at the very beginning. That was my friend's PC running at top speed. It was running overtime, like so much overtime, because she was playing The Last of Us, so her PC was dying. So that's what that was. But what was I gonna say? Right, so I snuck over to my friend's house, because she's grounded, because she didn't do, I'm pretty sure it was, like, she didn't do something. It had to do with laundry, and she didn't do something, but it wasn't her laundry, because she finished her laundry, like, I helped her with it, so I know she did it, but yeah, she's pretty much grounded from life. Like, she can't see or talk to anybody. She has a burner phone right now that she's using to text people. It's so funny. But anyways, me, being the dumbass I am, forgets I live in a desert and forgot my shoes. So I was, like, barefoot walking to my friend's house, and I was fine on the way there. But the thing is, I had to, like, run the opposite direction my house was at, because, like, there were a bunch of people outside the house, and I had to get out before we got caught. So I, like, bolted up the hill instead of down the hill, because I couldn't go that way because there were people, and so I had to take the long way. So I had to go up, over, and then down again, and then cross the road. So I'm pretty sure I have about, like, 4 blisters, but I'm fine. They're fine. Honestly, they don't hurt as much as they did hurt. But yeah, so that was something I did today. Another thing I did today was, eat a pancake, because I felt like making a pancake. And now I'm gonna eat dinner and take a shower, because I feel like doing that. And then record the next chapter for Press Hard to Subscribe, because I totally haven't done that yet, and I was supposed to do that days ago. So yeah. I'm gonna just eat dinner, take my shower, not exactly in that order. I could do it the other way if I wanted to. And then record the fic that I have to get out the day after tomorrow, because I'm finishing this Friday and it's supposed to come out Saturday. which, speaking of which, I have D&D tomorrow. Woo! We had to cancel last week because one of our character people things, I'm pretty sure our dungeon master was it. He had to work overtime at his job that day. He had to take a double shift or something like that. And so we couldn't play, sadly. But so we're doing it this week. And then next week, there's a big possibility that I won't get a video out Sunday because I'm gonna be going camping. And it's gonna last so I'm gonna do the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I won't really have enough time to record. Nor will I have the space because I'll be with my family for 3 days straight. Fun. I'm not gonna want to kill myself by the end of it. But I've probably been ranting over the amount of time I usually give myself, so I'm gonna shut my yapping now. I hope you all enjoyed and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.